uh, JD Moonen coming at you guys with another video. Um, I'm getting up on this microphone to do what I pretty much have come here to do. Uh, when I was young, I remember when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a youth pastor. You know, um, by the time I was 13 years old, I was teaching, backyard Bible studies and stuff like that when I was young. I was a very devout Christian when I was a child. Um, Somewhere along the way, uh, I I got mad at God, and I always knew there was something phony about Christianity, just because there was so much hypocrisy, and I noticed this at a very young age. People look at me and be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, okay, okay, JD." You know, um, some of us, we come here knowing that we're meant for something, right? I came here as a child, and I knew I was meant for something great. I knew I was gonna do something that was gonna change the world somehow, and I didn't realize until I got older. And it's interesting because I've had a very hard life too. I have not had an easy life. People look at me and they go, man, they see me, just I used to sit around and play video games all the time or whatever, but I haven't ever actually sat down and told anybody really my actual life story because it would take books, probably multiple books. It's like I've lived multiple lifetimes in my one life. By the time I was 20 years old, I saw more death in my lifetime than most people will see in their entire lifetime. By the time I was 20. Um, by the time I was 20, I'd already lived on my own for over 5 years. You know, I know what it's like to have to deal drugs to survive. I know what it's like to steal. Um, I've seen the dark side of reality. When I was 18 years old, we were standing in front of a magistrate, me and all the guys that I got arrested with, and the magistrate was telling us he was considering filing RICO charges on us. And so at 18, there was a possibility I could have been looking at 25 years in prison, 15 to life, because I fell in with the Thraces. I mean, I used to deal with those guys. MS-13, if you guys don't know who that is. I mean, I dealt with them a long time ago. I was very young at the time. And, you know, I was, by the time I was like 18 years old, I was kind of a kingpin. I ran a pretty big operation and I had a lot of people looking for me, wanting to bust me and stuff like that. I mean, I had my own detective that followed me around for a number of years. What's funny is later on down the line, who would have known? I ended up working with him to help him bust some really, really bad people um, that were molesting children and helped him take down a couple extremist groups back in early 2020. And I made quite a name for myself. You know, um, After I went to jail when I was 18, I turned my life around. I got married right after that. Um, it's people just don't know about my life. I was abused when I was young. Um, Me and my stepfather never really got along, but when his parents died, uh, I was abused all the time. I mean, he'd come home just drunk and just come in there and beat the hell out of me, and finally one day when I was 15 years old, I got tired of it and I left. And I was mad at my mom. My mom, my dad had beat me so bad one time that I couldn't even sit down in class. I had a black and blue mark across my ass that literally made it so painful for me to sit down. I couldn't even sit down. And they sent me to the nurse, and I remember when I was at the nurse, they told me to you know drop trowel because I wouldn't tell them what happened. I kept saying, "Oh, I just hurt myself," or and I just because I knew I couldn't have CPS get called, because my parents had just got my brother's kids, because him and his wife were going to prison, him and his girlfriend, and and so my parents had taken on his two kids, and I was still very young at the time. Well, when I dropped my pants, they saw the black and blue mark on my ass, and they called CPS. You know, and how did my pardon me, how did my mom deal with that situation? I mean, any other parent would have left the man, you know, because that was my stepdad. That wasn't even my biological father. My biological father was really nowhere to be found. You know, and he'll tell me, you know, oh well, they did this. You know, look, you know, I've seen parents, okay, and a parent who wants to be a part of their life will be a part of their life no matter what. You know, and it's no shade. I'm not mad at him. I forgive my dad. You know, my father now is actively a part of my life. You know, and that's all I could ask for. I can't ask for anything more than that. You know, it makes me very happy. And you know, my stepdad and I, we've got a much better relationship now. We went through another rocky patch when I lost some money of his in the stock market. Back when I became very, very successful. You know, I've had a lot of boom and busts in my life too. You know, I've went from, you know, from rags to riches so many times in my life. I ran a very successful, you know, production company. My friend was my best friend and business partner at the time was embezzling money. You know, and so I got discouraged and I quit. You know, and this was, you know, I was so successful as a DJ. What I did as a DJ, it's like I got it overnight. You know, what would take somebody 10 years, it took me not even a year. It just came so natural to me. And that's everything I've ever done. You know, if you understand numerology, you'll understand that master numbers exist. And master numbers, if you understand your master number and you embrace the numerology around it and you go inside, you will find that you have these abilities that you don't even have to be taught what to do. I was using the Socratic method before I even knew what it was. And I didn't learn what it was until I was in my late 20s when I went to college for philosophy. You know, and now here I am. I'm standing on the precipice. You know, I just had one of the hardest 5 years of my life ever. Here I am. I'm standing here. I'm confident again. I feel good. You know, and just to really confirm, you know, that the job, you know, the company I worked for prior, they did me wrong. They did me really, really, really dirty. And I think it was because I found out about some fraud that was going on, where I started to catch on to it. It was something with the AI that the company was implementing in New Mexico. And I started seeing some irregularities that I started studying. I started looking into, and I sent a message to my boss. And what was very interesting about that was not too long after that, I got fired. You know, I got shit-canned, well, laid off. Right? They gave me a severance package. You know, I just thought it was very funny. And here we are now. You know, over the last year, I've been unemployed. You know, and I spent a lot of time. I went on a very long vacation after taking care of my grandmother. Well, I applied during that time period. I applied to like 9 different jobs with Accenture. Actually, let me rephrase that. I was reached out to for like 9 different jobs, and finally now, I'm going back to work there. And what's interesting is the person who interviewed me was one of the management team that was over the New Mexico Medicaid project with Accenture. And what I find very funny about this is after I sat and talked to him, not only did I get the position, now I'm going to be level 3, not going to be on the phones anymore, and I got to pay raise. You know, and I find this very, very insane. And the reason why I say I find this insane is because, you know, the whole time I worked there originally, the whole time I worked for Accenture originally, I had asked multiple times to be put in the back because they weren't utilizing my abilities. When it comes to call center work, you know, I've been doing it for so long. I've got 10 years of experience doing it under my belt. I've been a supervisor. I've been a team lead. I've been QA. I know that job in and out. I can do it in my sleep. I can do mechanicing in my sleep. I can do anything I want to do, and I can learn it like that. The crazy thing is, so can you. So can every single person that's here, you know? One of the things I've been called to do is I've been called to teach people what God really is. Because there's this, you have so many people who are so afraid of God because of the Christian church, because of what the church has done, okay? Because of the people the church has murdered, Religion is control. I find it funny how, when you look at the Roman Empire supposedly had fallen, right? And the last standing Roman Empire was the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. And when it fell against so I forget the name of them. Man, they had that big ass cannon. Anyways, it's on the tip of my tongue. If I wasn't telling you, if I wasn't teaching you right now, then I would know who it is. The Ottoman Empire. That's who it was. But so, I was getting ready to write a thesis on this for college before I decided to leave, because it really pissed me off one day when I sat down and I thought about it, because I know a lot about the law, and I couldn't become a lawyer unless I went to law school for 8 years. Why the hell do I have to go to law school? If I know enough about the law, why can't I provide my services to people? That's a regulation that's bullshit, in my opinion. Why do I need any kind of degree? I know more about philosophy than some professors I've met. I've read more philosophy. And people over here who teach metaphysics and things like that, they don't even teach the fundamental bases of metaphysics from the East. It's all Western thought, which runs into a wall, because there's a fundamental problem with Western thought that the East makes up for, just like there's a fundamental problem with Eastern philosophy that the West makes up for. You have to join the two in order to get a full circle, to get a full paradigm, to understand the full swing. But what's interesting is I've spent most of my life asking the questions: why am I here? Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? When you look at my numerology chart, I'm one of those few people that has the burden of choice. My numerology chart doesn't tell me what's going to make me most fulfilled. It doesn't give me a path to follow that's most fulfilled, and that's because that's how it is for a master number. We make our way, our journey, and we oftentimes come in here, and when we do follow the master part, that master energy that's within us at birth, we do some really great things. One of the things that I've I guess decided to make a goal in my life is to help people who suffer from so-called mental illness to understand what these things are, because I don't believe they're illness. I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying the vast majority of them, I don't believe they're illnesses. Psychiatry and psychology has this interesting way of taking personality traits and labeling them and then calling them a problem. And I often wonder why. Why do they want so many people tanked up on drugs? I've asked that. I've wondered that. And all this time, after being told, my bipolar, you can never put it in remission. You can never, it can never be gotten rid of. It's this and that and whatever. As they're trying to lock me into a medication that keeps me depressed and removes all of my imagination and my ability to create or even think outside of the box. And when you look at suicide rates with bipolar, they're all medicated. So understanding those things, it really, really brings about the question, what are they trying to dumb down? Why? What is actually wrong with people? Or is there anything wrong with them? I'll tell you what's wrong with people. It's social media. Facebook, Twitter, all that. I'm not so much like YouTube or Twitch or any of that stuff. I'm talking about this instant validation, bullshit where these people post all these, like half nude pictures of themselves. They get all these men just drooling over these women. You have this degradation of masculinity, like it's innately evil, like every man is abusive if they're masculine in any way. You have you have women left and right saying they've been raped by this man, that man, you know, and I'm sorry, I just don't believe that all of these men have raped people, you know. I was accused of statutory rape by my first girlfriend's parents. My last girlfriend tried to tell me I raped her, and I never did such a thing, ever. I haven't ever done that to anybody. You know, I've been through so much shit in my life. I would spend the rest of my life writing books to tell my story. But the one thing I do believe that I'm here to do is to teach people who and what God actually is, and who and what you actually are. I want to leave it with this. You know, when I was young, I asked the question, when I was young, not too long ago, when I was going through my awakening, I asked God what it was to be made in his image. And in my mind's eye, I saw meiosis. For those of you who don't know what meiosis is the replication of a cell, how a cell replicates. And so what it does is it buds from one cell into another. It makes a carbon copy of the other one. The only difference is that whatever DNA changes have been done, the new cell has those changes. And so it's basically it's an evolved version. It's an ever bettering cell, right, if you will. Interestingly enough, we still die. I find that very interesting. How evolution supposedly is a thing, but yet we still die. And that's because people just don't understand that you don't actually die. Because you were never born. You know, being born is an illusion, just like dying is. That's something the Buddhists understand, and so the Hindus. They figured that they all figured that out pretty well. For some reason, the West we're taking quite a while to catch on to that. We're still thinking there's a heaven, not realizing heaven and hell is right here. It has been the whole time. God and Satan are right here, and they're one and the same. You know, people see Satan as this evil thing, but yet he's God's favorite, right? He's sent here to test you. He does his job really fucking well, if you ask me. But so, I know what it's like to be addicted to substances. I know what it's like to kick it. People say once an addict, always an addict. That's not true. Not even close. People say that you can see addiction with a brain scan. Okay, well, what about somebody who's no longer addicted to something? Does a brain scan look the same? What I think that it all gets chalked up to is it's trauma. We have a whole lot of broken people running around breaking more people. And it's all because people don't know who they are. They don't know what they are. I mean, if I was to look at everybody and I was to tell them they were God, and they actually understood it and they believed it, do you think they'd be walking around hurting people like they do? Because that's who you are. You're a little piece of God, just like the planet is that you roll on, you know? People don't understand what God is. God is consciousness. This whole universe is consciousness. It's one big conscious energy bubble. Somewhere. We're inside a living entity is what it is. And the question is, well, what defines living? So let me rephrase that. We're inside of a conscious entity, and we are a part of it. We are just as divine as the entity itself. We have this dualistic mindset, and so we have this illusion that there is a separation of self and other. That's an illusion. There is no such thing. You and other are the same thing. Just like you and water are the same thing. You and carbon are the same thing. You and space are the same thing. The only difference is the way in which that energy manifests and works. And that's God's creation. That's what's so beautiful. Our solar system is not some artifact. It's just a bunch of rocks that circulate around each other, and it's just some stupid thing that just happens just because. No, it's perfectly calculated. That's why the planets stay in their orbit. If they're off by fractions of percentages, they would fly all over the place, running into each other and all that shit. But yet they don't. And somehow, interestingly enough, when we observe them longer, we realize that the gravitational pull of all of those objects is what keeps every object in place. Not just the sun. The sun's just the biggest one. And so when I look at you and I tell you that all of that is a conscious happening, it is not by coincidence. There is no such thing as coincidence. If you go inside and you realize that you can talk to spirit and you start talking to God inside of yourself and you realize where the church actually is. Church is not some building down there with a cross on it. That was never the church. Christ was here to destroy that building. And they killed him for it. People don't understand what Christ was teaching because it was lied. People were lied to about it. They were told a story and everyone bought it, hook, line, and sinker. My question for you is do you think for one moment that the rabbis would kill the very man that they were waiting on? Especially when a rabbi went out and verified the man was committing what they call miracles? No. You see, they didn't kill him because he was a blasphemer. Well, for lying about being the Messiah anyways. They killed him because he was destroying the church. And he was teaching people a teaching that was making them obsolete at a time where they were just starting to gain control. So this man is dangerous because, see, Christianity was just now taking its root in the Roman Empire at the time of Christ. Christ was trying to keep the world from falling into the Dark Ages because that's where they were going. People don't understand that. We think that the Dark Ages ended when the Holy Roman Empire emerged out of Europe and there was recorded history. No, the Dark Ages, we're still in them. The Dark Ages are being removed from God and thinking this false fake thing that we've been told is God and believe in it. There's this really interesting book, right? And it's called The Problem with Good and Evil. It's written by. I'm sorry, it's not written by. It's a speech. Okay, it's a speech from some people who basically specialize in hermetic knowledge, hermetic philosophies and knowledge, and they understand how to read the mystical, because the mystical cannot be taken as the literal. You have to understand how they spoke back then and how they taught to be able to read and understand the Bible. And that's the problem with today, is that people read and understand the Bible as though it is a factual piece of history. It is absolutely partially a piece of history. But it's a story about how a church would rise and it would take over the world, and when everybody found out the truth, it would fall. And that's what's happening. The second coming isn't what anybody in this world believes it's going to be. It's not going to be this thing that people think it's going to be. It's a transition. It's when people finally learn that they're eternal already. It's when people learn that they are God. It's when people learn that they can manifest that magic is real. It's when spirituality becomes the focus once again, and people stop succumbing to control. They stop being controlled by governments. They stop being controlled by religion, by football, by whatever's controlling you. So I'm here to tell you that there is a way, there is a key to the cuffs that you wear. That key is learning how to think, not what to think. You know, if you just look at the Bible and you just read it and think about it for a moment, you'll realize the story don't make sense. You know, when you sit down and you ask yourself, why, how do these psychics, how do they do their thing? How does it work? How can they tell the future? Because they can. You know, I've read many cards and it has been the future. There's a whole big, wide universe of things that we can't see. And people think that because you can't see it, it's not real. It's not happening. Oh, that's the fallacy. Because, you know, we all have a smartphone, right? You can't see that wave from the cell tower, can you? But yet that some bitch still works, don't it? So is it too hard to believe that the energy around you can be controlled? That you can make it do the things that you want by just intending it to do it? People mistake it and they think that it's going to happen right now because, you know, on movies and stuff, we see these mages go, you know, they have fire in their hand. I mean, I'm privy to the idea that we probably could do that at one time, you know, but that knowledge has obviously been taken away from us because we're not responsible enough to have it. Our race has gotten so irresponsible, it's not even funny. You know? You have people believing that man-made climate change is real. It's relevant. You have people believing that there's a heaven. Well, the heavens are there. Yeah, we could look up and they're there. They're right there. That's the heavens. That's them right there. I think the part that people are failing to realize is that if you want to talk about the dimension that you think you're going to die and go into, you get to access it every night. It's called your dream state. Some people call it the fifth dimension. That's what a lot of people like to call it. You know, when you finally learn who and what you actually are, your life will get a lot easier. It'll allow you to stop assuming people are certain ways or you know this or that, because you're going to realize one day that all of those people you made fun of, those people you thought were crazy, they're the ones that are going to change the world. I mean, imagine what people thought about Elon Musk whenever he was making the ATM. Probably thought he was crazy.